You mean willing?
Well,
Yeah.
the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for the way that you are present with us. We give you thanks for the ways that you help us incarnate your presence in this world. Lord, as we discern our next steps, guide us. Help us to be open to one another and to your will before us. Help us to live out your love and your peace. This we pray in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
And I'm going to do this. Just, why not? Because I want to spend maybe about 10 minutes giving a little background here. And some of this will be familiar for some of us, and for some of us it won't be. And I'm not going to try to follow any precise timeline. I just want to see how we can kind of get ourselves to where we are right now here, because there are several threads of thought that kind of come together in this moment. And so when I was first called to Redeemer in 2016, there really was kind of, the vestry said, we need some help. We want to figure out some things because there's some unresolved issues that we have. One is location. And there had been someone from the diocese, I don't know what year it was, 2010 or 12, it wasn't the bishop, I believe, but somebody came and said, if the church doesn't move out to the lake in 5 years, it's going to close. Right? And which will kind of put a little damper on the feeling on how things are going. And so that was taken to heart. And then the other issue was the Saturday service. There was just a feeling like having two different locations on two different days, and it didn't feel, it wasn't for everybody, but for some of our members it felt like it wasn't quite right. And so how can we try to get ourselves resolved and going forward and not continually wondering what's going to happen next? And so what kind of grew out of that was what we called holy conversations. And we got together over the course of time, multiple times, and talked about all the different possibilities. And it's important to keep in mind that Saturday service was created almost as an experiment, as I understand it. Now, I wasn't here at the time, but as an experiment to see what would happen if we had a Eucharistic presence closer to folks out at the lake. If it's closer, and we start really kind of growing, that's information, right? And so it didn't happen that way. But what did happen was it provided an opportunity for folks who are having some physical challenges, unable to deal with the facility here, to have an easy way to have an Episcopal worship service experience. And so that's really what, in my experience over the last 7 years, has been largely the flavor of our Saturday service. And so we got together in these holy conversations. This is one thread of thought here. And we talked about every possibility in terms of addressing the need for accessibility, to have some type of restroom, bathroom accessibility for folks. And to the other thing that was coming out was gathering spaces. We're all crammed into this little space right here, right? This is as good as it gets in our current location. And the best that we can do is seat, 30 folks, 40 folks, if we really get in there, 40 folks for a meal together. And so also a space that we can gather with larger numbers. Anyone who was here for the reception yesterday knows that this is a woefully small space when it comes to something like that. And so this was the conversations that we were having. What happens, how much does it cost if we go out to the lake, and if we build something out there? And we did feasibilities on each of these. We talked about picking up the church and moving it down the road. We talked about every single possibility. And what came out of the holy conversations were these two things. That we decided we were going to stay in this location, that the historic building was very important to a good number of our folks, the majority, over the majority by far, folks found that as to be highly valuable, and that we were going to continue with the Saturday service, but we were going to do what we can to create accessible space for our folks, including restrooms that are accessible for everybody. And so this is part of what kind of came out of here, as well as a desire to have an expanded gathering space. Right? That's one thread. Another thread, almost concurrently with this, was Bill Sinke, our junior warden at the time, had put some new gutters up. Had new gutters put on both sides of the sanctuary. And after he did that, he noticed the straight line to the gutter went like this, and the roof line went just a little bit, like maybe an inch or so underneath it, towards the center. And he thought, that sounds like a foundation. And so thanks be to God, he thought that, because look underneath there, and sure enough, the 150-year-old bricks that are holding up this building were starting to have issues under there. And if I understand the foundation right, John, we had bricks along the side, and we've got 2 long Georgia pine logs held up by bricks as well.
Yeah, 14 by 14.
Yeah. And so this is what was holding our, and these were older bricks. They've been around since the beginning in early times. So, now we had a new priority, right? The foundation of the church. And so we put this all together and came up with a plan. John Brawley did a beautiful job. He and the feasibility team did a wonderful job of coming up with an idea and a solution. And the solution was that we came up with was this: that we would tear down the children's center. That's right, that little building right next to the sanctuary, and we would build a multi-floor building. We'd acquired the parking lot by this time. We had acquired the little strip of land, but we thought, well, we can work on that. And so, and what this would give us then is a straight shot out of the church. We could come right out the door of the church, go straight on into this building, and have an accessible bathroom right there. Nice and easy peasy. That would be wonderful. And there'd be multiple levels so that we would have a gathering space on another level. There'd be elevators for folks to be able to and it was a beautiful vision that John had done. It really was very, very nice. And the cost for this was $1.4 million. Right? Maybe we could get it down to 1.2 or 1. We thought maybe even 1, if we kind of shave some corners here and there. And thought, well, that's a lot of money. But we have no idea what we can raise as a church. And so we hired the services of Rob Towns, who is with Sinclair and Towns, a consulting group that I know some folks have maybe worked with before. And they specialize in churches and with fundraising and capital campaigns. And we asked Rob and their team to say, okay, what do you think? Can you help us figure out what we might be able to raise? And they met with a good number of folks here, and they came up with a final number of about $550,000 to $600,000. Now, privately, he said, I think that you could probably actually get 7. But in the report that we got, $550,000 to $600,000. That's not $1.4 million, right? And at the same time, the diocese said, no loans for capital buildings. For 20 years, they've been watching these churches go completely under because they just get buried under taking out too big of loans. Things change financially in the life of the church, and then they are really, really struggling. So this is kind of the end of 2019, entering into 2020, taking a step back and saying, okay, so what can we do with our current facilities? Right? We still have these 3 objectives. We need to take care of the foundation of the church. We need to do something about a gathering space. We need to have something about accessibility here for us. And we started to look at this building here when the pandemic hit. Right? And so what that did was it afforded us a little bit of time, and John Fox did just a wonderful job with Curtis Wetzel and other folks who did the foundation work, redid the foundation of the church. The flooring was renovated and refurbished. What's the word? Language is refurbished, right?
Yes.
Yes, right. We're not renovating, but we did refurbish the floors. Bill Sinke redid the pews, the windows. Everything was just beautifully done. And we were able to raise $120,000 in a relatively short period of time to accomplish that. And that took 2020 on into 2021, if you recall, when we started to be able to kind of gather together again in worship together, is about the time that we were also able to have most of the windows done, but not all of them done at that same time. And as I recall, about that point then, John, because that took all the oxygen in the room to get that work done, and started to ask architects, okay, here's our situation, here's this historic building, and we would like to have bathroom access for that for handicapped folks, as well as a gathering space. And as I recall, John maybe even engaged 2 or 3 different architects, and they would spend a little time with us, and then they wouldn't get back to us. And then another team, and so that took up a little bit of time until we arrived with Abernathy and
Trout, Matheny, and Thurman.
Yes. AMT, right?
AMT, not ATM.
Right, and so that's really kind of how we've kind of gotten to our place today. It's important as you listen to all of this is also to keep in mind that we did hear from from historic preservation folks as we've been doing this work that there's nothing we can do to the exterior border of our church. Nothing we can do to that to be able to preserve the historic nature of it. And guess what? That also includes the footprint includes the garden around it. What's visible from the road in terms of the ground, what's in front and to the sides of this. And so that was a little information for us who thought, well, maybe we can just build a little something off the side that kind of mirrors what the sacristy is, for example. And that would lose the historic preservation of our building if we were to do such a thing. I think that covers. Well, it brings us up to date.
You can ask everybody else.
Father Bill, was there not the suggestion at that time to move the organ and put a restroom
With it,
right
we talked about
inside the
all.
church
We talked about
there?
all the options. We figured that would not be very private.
Yeah.
But that was it. Well, we did talk about all the different. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And we talked about them again last November.
Yeah. Right.
Right. They
Right. We've
still-
not given up on that as
Wasn't
a
there one even to
possibility.
put it up by the altar?
Up by the altar was
Yeah,
another
right.
choice.
Right. Yeah. Without having side aisles, it really affects how we are able to function. And so, anyway, I'm going to turn things over here
Okay, thank you.
to Lynn. I'll turn that back on.
It's lights. Carl, did you bring your weapon of mass destruction? Can you send that up? It's kind of awkward here. I don't know how many can see the slides or not see the slides.
You need me to move one way or the other.
No, you don't have to go.
John, in the darkness, does this go away?
It just shows that right now.
Okay.
Okay, just to pick up from where Father Bill was, for those who don't know me, I'm Len Scullion, and I'm John Fox once removed, or whatever. I feel tall today because I'm standing on John's shoulders and the whole committee's shoulders. So if we go back, again, we had the comprehensive, I'm going to talk about a year, from last year to here, and we're going to whiz through the first 6 or 7 months so that we can concentrate on what's happened this year. Okay, since January. But the comprehensive renovation, refurbishment, whatever, of the worship center was done. We needed a post-COVID reboot, and we were all back in church. And then last spring, both John Braley and John Fox thought it was a good time to bring the capital campaign committee together and the planning and building committee together and just say, okay, where are we and where are we going? And a missing member of all that was finding an architect to work as part of our team. And again, John did a good job finally getting to the point where we were able to get AMT from Athens, who has worked on church construction, church additions, and church renovations. A small multidiscipline firm, and that means they have architects, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and a lot of technicians. So a small firm that can do it all. Go ahead, Father Bill. So the membership of the committee, obviously Father Bill, Les is junior warden, John is our chair emeritus, I'm the current chair, Nancy, Connie, Carl, Mimi, Christine of course has moved on, and our senior warden and chair of capital campaign as ex officio members. We always invite them to the meetings, and our senior wardens have been very faithful at coming to the meetings and giving us input.
And I did want to say, I meant to say this earlier during the service, that Kathy would have been here if she was able to be, but she wasn't. That's why she wanted to get up and give her support for this whole the
And
work so
Kathy's
far.
been, I mean, my sleeves are rolled up, Kathy's sleeves have been rolled up since she's been here, and so were Linda's. Again, a cross-sectional of talent and skills. One of the things we did last fall was ask Mimi to join us because of her knowledge of historic preservation. So she became a part of the team, and that has really helped us. Incidentally, any committee members, if you want to come in with a comment, come in at any time. This is not my show. Okay? Okay, so rebooting last spring and summer. So there were 3 key meetings. Again, that joint committee meeting, and the takeaway from that is the fundraising capacity was reduced from the 1.4 million that was the original thought down to $550,000 to $600,000. Okay, and of course Father Bill mentioned that there's a moratorium on capital improvement loans. The focus at that time we thought was narrowed to the activity center first floor, and I think we need more room here, and the ADA restroom or restrooms. In June we got together, and David Matheny, he's the, if you will, the operations principal of the architect engineer firm. So David's kind of hands-on, and he came to a meeting in June. We had a great session. It was a lot of give and take, and that was really his recon tour, if you will, of the facility to find out what it was all about. And the nice thing about that is he didn't go away. He stayed with us. And then in July, we had, this is the famous Father Bill flip chart meeting. And if you look in the files, my gosh, we brainstormed and Father Bill recorded. And we went through the whole thing again. We talked about all the stuff and came right back to the activity center, first floor, all it can be, and restrooms for the worship center. So that was pretty clear focus at that time. August through October was kind of a dead period, folks doing what they're doing, and John and I trying to get the architect to the table. What was happening was the architect, the firm on, and finally in the September conversation I said to David, if you can't do it, who in your firm can? And he said, well, my senior architect, Wes Baumgartner, is pretty good at that. So we got in touch with Wes, and things started moving. So he became not the principal, but the lead person on this project. Go ahead, Father Bill. So we refined that focus. Again, the target cost. We talked about how are we going to use AMT as a team member. We didn't, if $600,000 is your target, John and many of us know that are in the building business, architect engineer is going to want 10 to 12% of that. So we certainly didn't want to dole out $60,000 to the architect at that point in time. And what we really needed to know is what's possible, what's a concept, what's it going to cost, and what can you give us that we can bring to the congregation and see if the congregation sees themselves in it. So what we did was we created a phase one, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we thought it would cost about $30,000. The number was $28,000, and it wasn't until January that we actually got that purchase order to AMT, but that didn't stop them from working. In a October meeting, and I'll show you a little bit about the scope of the activity center renovations, but in an October meeting, the senior warden made it very clear, yes, we want to look at both things, but the highest priority for us is the ADA restroom for the worship center. That's number one, and then from there we have the activity center. But we're going to get the architect engaged so that he can look at everything at once. We looked at 2 options on the restrooms. We looked at all 7 options, and one was do nothing, that didn't work. Where's Nancy? Nancy's not here. Nancy Beckmeyer said, well, let's just put some portable toilets up there. Obviously that didn't work. We looked at the child activities building, and that didn't work from the standpoint of what it would cost, and reopening that whole building to support a restroom. We looked at building a bridge across to the second floor of this building, and redoing the restroom upstairs as an ADA. That's great, but ultimately you need the elevator to get back and forth. But we did look at that one. We looked at the intimacy inside the church, and that dog doesn't hunt. We looked at putting it as a part of the church, in addition to the church, and as Mimi and Father Bill will tell you, that dog doesn't hunt. So we said, well, Les and Carl came up with the idea, let's just put it behind the worship center, all right, kind of not too visible. So we looked at that, and then we looked at the bridge. And then in November, that we recommended to the vestry that we proceed to get AMT on board, and we agreed. And so it took us November to negotiate that, and we ordered the purchase order in January. And what was good about that was we went from one senior warden to the next senior warden, and the Kathy coming in new had to get up to speed very quickly, and then she actually signed the purchase order. So this is what we talked about in October, and that was the scope of the activity center renovations. Primarily this floor, about 3,300 square feet, assembly area for about 100 people, ADA restrooms, kitchen upgrade. One of the things that you find out, and Nancy's been very helpful on this, working with the local code enforcement officers and AMT with their knowledge. This does not have to be a commercial facility. It does not have to be a commercial kitchen. Some of the rules that apply to public facilities, if it's a religious activities center, it can be, you know, basic kitchen, and some of the other code requirements don't apply. Rector's office and the admin office here on the first floor, we'll show you that suite. A multi-purpose room, food pantry, storage. We need good circulation, ingress and egress, code compliance, utilities, security and IT. Part of that would come later in the design. And then we thought about some maybes. The laundry cove, elevator, lift, and a covered entry from the parking lot. So that's kind of the thing we were talking about last October. Okay, what do we get from AMT? We wanted them to look at the facility. And when they were here in December and January, they had people all over this building. And they went in places underneath that many of us wouldn't go. They've looked at the structure. They've looked at the walls of the structure, mechanical, electrical. That is key to anything we do. General conditions, they looked at the code compliance, and the whole idea was to give us a functional layout. Phase 1 deliverables, which is where we are now, is the condition assessment, the layout, estimated costs, and presentation materials. We have some boards back there I invite you to look at when we're through. Phase 2 would be the final design, and that's in the future. Okay? Any questions at this point? Go ahead, Bill. Okay, so December to present. This is where we've gotten to today. Purchase order was issued. They did their site investigations. And then in March, we had a sleeves rolled up session for our committee with the architect. And we came up with red line drawings like you wouldn't believe. We took generation 1 of his prints, and they were all marked up in red pen. You know, everybody had something to say, and all the suggestions were good. And that's where you could tell we had a lot of skills and abilities on our committee, because that was a really good session. They also provided a recommendation at that time that the restroom should be located at the left rear of the sanctuary on the walkway that comes down to the activity center, and we'll take a hard look at that in a minute. And at that time, a couple of committee members indicated, well, we really haven't done much with the kitchen yet. You know, we were playing with this whole area up to the kitchen, and we said we need to see if we can expand the kitchen and come up with some concepts. AMT went away, and they came back in a month, and they had generation 2 drawings for us. Incorporated all of those red line comments. It was a really good session. We still continued with the restroom behind the worship center, updated cost information, and they determined that we could push out the north wall and the west wall of the kitchen and gain about 80 more square feet. So again, there's fake walls there. So today we have what we call generation 3 of the activity center first floor drawings to look at. Follow Bill. So the worship center, let's just go ahead to picture here.
Okay.
Okay.
Len, before
Yes.
you go any further, what about the bridge? Why did we're centering on this? So we have, at this point, we have disallowed the bridge. So
Good point.
you might want to let everybody know.
So Carl and John helped me with this. It turns out that the elevation difference between where the walkway ends and the second floor of this building is about 4 feet 3 inches. And that's kind of an eye-opener, because we have 30 to 35 feet roughly across, and you're looking at a slope of 4 feet and 30 feet. There's no way you can ADA that ramp. And after you get over 30 feet, you've got to have a stop point of 5 feet that's level. You just cannot get an ADA compliant bridge from there to here. Initial cost to just try to do a wooden bridge on piles, the architect estimated, now this is not ADA, this is just a slant shot between them, is $65,000. Okay? Iron might be in the range of $100,000 or $110,000. Dano?
I'm confused. If you're gonna put a nice looking bathroom up here behind the church,
Right.
for people, I suppose, that cannot walk down here or walk next door, then how are they gonna ever get down here? I mean.
Same way they always did.
So why?
You have to go around, okay? We'll
And why
talk,
do we need a bathroom there
okay?
if I don't understand.
We now have a proposal to have a bathroom adjacent to or close by the worship center. All right, that allows anybody to use adjourn service before service without coming all the way down here.
But we couldn't renovate the one next door over here in the children's center?
Again, John, comments?
We looked at, going back to the number of architects we basically had 3 architects look at this thing. And all of them, and one of them was the fellow that did the presentation of the renovation, whatever, Joseph Smith.
Yes,
is here.
yeah.
By the way, he did a presentation in Eatonton.
Okay.
It was 2 weeks ago. But Joe Smith looked at it. We got another firm that was recommended. Mimi, what was the architect out of Monroe?
I can't think of his name. He did
Did
the
some work
building
in the
is-
courthouse. He did some stuff here.
courthouse that we're on.
And then and Reverend Bill will attest with me. He ended up becoming very. He didn't want to work with us, and I didn't want to work with him, to be honest with you.
But basically, I think the problem really was there was no feasible way of connecting somebody from the front door of our sanctuary to the children's center without some very complicated, or maybe even some folks even said it couldn't be done, ramping to get them over there.
It was multiple ramps, and
Okay. It just seems strange if you're gonna get them to a bathroom, which I don't see that many people leaving church in the middle of church to go to the bathroom, but they can't get down here if they have disabilities.
Well, let me just speak a little bit to that might also be happening on Saturdays. Right? That's part of what the Saturday service, that's an itch that scratches, is that those folks who might have those issues are able to attend, and we've had folks who've had to get up in the middle of the service,
Okay.
and they start coming on Saturday for that particular
So
reason.
Saturday you would think, and they're not gonna be coming down here for anything, so that wouldn't.
So Saturday, so the idea if we have our accessible facilities here,
Then they can
then the
come
Saturday
down.
still happens, but it's happening here.
Okay.
Okay, so does that address that? Yeah.
You're answering a question that's been asked many times.
It's a really good
Well,
question.
I'm
And
sure
Ellen-
that you all know, you've been through all
Well,
this a
again,
million
relying
times.
on the knowledge here,
It just seems
Yeah.
like, I mean, guess it's basically money. We don't have enough money to get a way for people to easily get down here without driving back around.
that's correct.
This
That's
is,
correct.
And let's acknowledge that the vision that John Brawley had presented to us was an ideal that we really wish that we could be able to do, and now we're working with something that we're hoping can make it work in a more compromised kind of way, if
All
that
right, well,
makes
if I
some
win the
sense.
lottery, you can go with it.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
I'm gonna do one more question and then keep
Okay,
going, just so
sure,
we can get to
okay.
the end.
Just thinking of Saturday night, which is
Right.
what one of the issues are. Has there been any talk about having a separate chapel down here that people could come in and have Saturday service, have the ADA bathrooms? Is that has that been discussed?
That came up, but you would not be able to have an organ. You wouldn't be able to have the same facility. When you see what Lynn's about to present here, either you would have it in like a fellowship hall kind of a thing. It would basically not feel nearly the same amount of sacredness to it, if that makes some sense. It's something that the Saturday night folks would say no, and did say no. The folks I talked to.
All right, so just to go to the concept of the standalone restroom, basically that's the entrance to the sanctuary now. That's what we call the flagstone walkway, and this is the area where it would be located behind the church. We looked at all areas here. This tree here presents a large problem. If it stays in place, it's a very complicated building. If it goes away, you've got to backfill it and provide undisturbed soil. And it's also very visible from the road. This is tucked in behind, and I guess, one of the meetings, somebody said, oh, by the way, this is on the way. You have one restroom down here, maybe on Sunday morning going to church. From here, there's a restroom on the way, or coming back, there's a restroom on the way. So it's not just if you're in church, it's also on the way back and forth to the activity center.
Then would you also be redoing that stone path behind the church?
Okay, this is
She's talking about behind the church.
Oh, yes.
Coming
You'd
from
have to,
the
you'd have
Memorial
to,
Garden.
yeah, you'd have
Right
to,
there.
this would have to be more of a sidewalk, just to get in. The
Right.
entrance is here.
Because we do have things that we do over in the Memorial Garden.
Right.
You know,
And this walkway, if we're talking pure ADA, does not meet ADA levelness requirements. So it would have to be reconstructed, and that's what we're talking about now. The architect's given us a cost, he thinks, for reconstructing it without a surface. There's some discussion with our landscape architect and the committee about possibly using a bluestone to pick up the character of the garden. That's one thing, I'll mention at the end, is something we're still working on. That's a work in progress. Does that answer your question? So, Father Bill, so this is kind of what it looks like, and you're walking down the pathway here, and you go in there, and it just has the appearance of the church. It's board and batten. It's really not very large. I don't have a copy of the scale drawing here, but it's really small and tucked in behind.
but it's big enough to be ADA.
Yeah, we're going to show this.
Yes,
Father Bill?
yes it is.
Shower in it though, does it?
No.
No.
Father Bill.
And you have to do that at home.
Okay, this is it. It's a small ADA compliant restroom. It's one fixture and a sink, and there's enough room to get in and do it. It's about 6 foot by 9 foot, and that's it's kind of an economic ADA standalone small building.
People can get a wheelchair in there.
Right.
So do you have to put in a septic tank, or what do you?
Okay. Second tricky part. We've got the walkway we talked
I'm worried
about.
about the tree.
Okay.
Yeah, right, yeah.
The big tree doesn't matter.
Okay.
We may have to do some pruning on the magnolias,
Yeah, I
and
was
of
wondering
course
about
Nancy
that.
is saying that's doable, but don't mess with them too much. So let's go back. a couple
Oh, you want to go
slides.
back?
Okay, one more. Okay, so when you come from here, this building is right here, and this is, what's that called, North Avenue?
Yes.
Okay, down in this corner of the building, and I'll show it when we see the floor plan, is the sewer line. So we have to get from here to there. So basically the concept is to drop down under this building and come down and connect in here. Okay, that's a tricky part of this construction. We haven't gotten to design yet, but Joanne, I'll tell you, I spent 15 minutes with the architect and the engineers the other day saying, okay, is that Schedule 80 PVC? Is that ductile iron? What's it going to be? And they say, we'll have to decide that when we look at the code. All right, so we haven't designed this yet, but the sewer comes down here. All right? Look, all right. So that's the restroom, Father Bill. The activity center now, we'll get to look at some layouts here. Again, we're looking at a general area, assembly area of 1,125 square feet, 75 people seated at tables for any sort of a formal function or a dinner function. The potential for 100 plus in auditorium seating. And then the architect says 161 can stand in there, but I wouldn't want to be.
That's for the New Yorkers.
There's two main restrooms, one on this side of the assembly area, one on that side. Plus, in the admin area, we have its own restroom. Multi-purpose. We've added a multi-purpose flex room. If you remember, that was on the list, and that could be vestry meetings. It could be religious education. It could be childcare. On a given Sunday. We've added the outreach pantry, and about half that table is lost with the outreach pantry, and I'll show you where that is. There's storage. Joanna's sitting in the storage closet back there, and the restroom is where Ginny is. Okay. We've maintained the huddling area near the kitchen. Very important on a Sunday morning, be able to get your coffee and just be able to huddle here. The kitchen area, we talked about the walls being pushed out. The concept for the kitchen needs to be worked on before the architect can go any farther. So the thought is, let's get a separate committee, and Senior Warden has created a separate committee of 4 people to look at the kitchen and say, what are our basic needs and what are the nice to haves? Okay, and you'll see that the range of those costs impacts our budget greatly. An ADA entrance to the parking lot. The middle entrance over here becomes the main entrance. And the estimated cost for doing all of this is about $540,000 plus the kitchen. And keep in mind, we still have the restroom. And the estimated cost for the restroom building itself is $26,000. And we're probably talking $12,000 to $15,000 for that whole walkway. So we got a package of about $40,000 for that restroom. All right, and all these costs are estimates. We're not at the lake, we're not 10%, 20% more cost, we're in Greensboro, but we still have to find the right contractors to want to do this at a reasonable price, and that's gonna be a real trick, okay? I'll go. Okay, so we're starting at the North Avenue side. This is the old dental office, okay? This slab right here is 10 inches higher than the rest of the building. Okay? So to make this work as an open area, it doesn't work. But to make this work as a rector's office admin area with a separate entrance during the week, it's kind of nice. Their own restroom. This area, we close that door off that's never used, that becomes storage. This is the second floor egress, and that could be an egress from here too. Okay, so that's the, if you will, the south side of the building. Go ahead, Father Bill. Yep, yeah, that's good. So that's that wall that ends the admin suite. Now we're going down 10 inches. So we have a ramp here. This is the multi-purpose room, accessible to the assembly area, storage, and a larger ADA restroom. And the interesting comment the architect has here is baby changing table. Wouldn't that be nice?
It'd be nice to need one, right?
So then,
Maybe an adult changing table.
moving right along. Bob, Bill, take me to the next slide. So this is the assembly area. Again, this is roughly 26 by 42 this way. And you've got the 1,123 square feet. Occupancy of 75 seated. These are 4.5-foot tables, they're not 6. And the architect says most churches will go out and buy 6-foot tables or 5-foot tables, and they waste all the table space when they could have more people space. So we're looking at
Smart.
and smaller tables here as necessary. So you have 4 tables and 6 tops. So that's the assembly area with its main entrance again, the middle room, the middle door. This is the ADA restroom where Jenny is sitting right now, and this is storage on right here under the stairs. This area, which is where we're going to cut the table in half today, that becomes the outreach pantry area and some storage. And ultimately, if we do figure out a way to need the second floor, this would become an elevator space. And again, a target cost for an elevator may be $100,000 today. A decent one. If you're looking at a residential elevator like these Hulus, it's probably $60,000. But just those rough numbers. Bill? Okay, again, the kitchen, this pushes this wall out, it pushes this wall out, and it puts a ramp here. This is going downstairs. This is not part of the kitchen, although that's the kitchen pantry. The thought is, tell me what we need here. Can we use the existing cabinets and save money? The idea would be to have the ranges over here where they can get exhaust right out of the wall. Shows refrigerator here, a couple of dishwashers, but again, that's just conceptual. that all needs to be worked out. Questions?
Let me just ask a quick question. Will there be any kind of facility for altar-built storage? It would be
What?
wonderful to have a place where we could hang our big linens so they don't are rolled up in a drawer.
Where do you do that now?
They're in a drawer in that tiny sacristy, all
Okay.
rolled up.
So I guess we could carve out, go back, Father Bill.
Yeah, we can go back to.
Well, we could carve out space here, although it's under the stairway. Where Joanne's sitting, that storage will be a little higher. That might be very convenient.
I've just seen other churches where they have like rods and you can just
Yes.
hang the linens
Yeah.
over
And
them.
And Joanne's very familiar with that from our
Yeah.
last church.
Right, so,
But it could be right there.
okay.
It's a tall space with a little bit of slant. We need to make mental note of that. Okay? And more?
No, it's just, we can keep our small stuff in the drawers up in the sacristy, but the big linens would
And
be.
that would be accessible. There's a door going outside, right
Right,
next to
Yes.
that storage space, so that would be a quick way of
Yeah, it would
accessing that if that.
I think that's easily done.
okay.
We were thinking that that area over there would be chair storage. You know, we could store tables in the room however we want to do it, but extra chairs could be over there. The storage is flexible, and go back now.
We go back to.
Go back one more.
Oh, I'm
Nope,
sorry.
You're going the wrong way.
You wanna
All right,
go
right here, we have this storage.
Okay.
Okay?
I just want to add, we'll still have the upstairs for any storage we'd like to have.
Right.
Upstairs.
Right.
It's still going to be functional up there. So, like, for instance, the upscale resale stuff doesn't have to go thrown into a kitchen, you know, because we will be using that children's center.
Yeah.
So for storage facilities too, we've still got that whole upstairs.
But this
That
is
would be
convenient,
accessible.
right
That's
here.
convenient for,
Rackable,
yeah.
all right? The other salient comment that came out the other day was, oh, by the way, if we build that little building, let's put a hose bib on it so that the gardeners can at least have a hose right next to the memorial garden, which they don't have now.
That'd be great,
So
yeah.
it's just kind of
Yeah.
these are the things that are popping up. Let's go a little farther now.
Go forward now.
Okay, so that's the exterior look. Again, this is that middle door. There's your Christian Activity Center look. All right, it's kind of a cheap way to go. That little metal thing goes away, and this is kind of a covered walkway going in. We were talking, this comes in this way, and then the door swings that way. This may have to go over here, so it's easier to get into that door with your wheelchair. Father Bill? Okay, we have some drawings that are over here, some representations. You can ooh and ah, but I would ask that you keep your pencils in your pocket because we're going to try to use those. And then, Father Bill, okay, so what's next? We get input, we review that, and the committees take a look at it. The kitchen subcommittee gives us input to AMT, and they work over on that after we receive it. We have to figure out this garden walkway, and then once we've done the kitchen and we know what we're going to do with the walkway concept-wise, then AMT wraps up their deliverables to us, and phase one is over. We put them on hold. Then the vestry and the committees get together, okay, and what's next? What do we have to do next? And this is sometime maybe late summer, I don't know. When Father Bill gets back, we've talked about taking kind of a breather to catch all this stuff together. And then at one point, the Planning and Building Committee and the Capital Campaign Committee are going to have to coordinate a handoff so that the Capital Campaign Committee can pick up the ball here. And if you and everybody else in the congregation sees yourself in this, then to do the fundraising. And as Father Bill and Les and other people have said, 600,000 to 700,000, which it could ultimately be, is a stretch. But the question is, can we get there? Father Bill, back to you.
Okay, yeah, and keep in mind, this really is not we're not trying to present a finished product here. We are presenting where we are right now, and really are looking for your input and your place. I feel like this is something that that we can do this, and I think that it enhances our life together tremendously. And so,
So what is going back to specifics, so then you end up being able to use this whole
right.
building and the unused portion and everything. So the north, is it Avenue,
Right.
side?
That part's
What's done on the outside? It looks so much different than the church. I mean, does it stay stucco? Does it, I mean, what is the outside of the building? Does it stay as it is?
It's a good question. We've talked a little bit about the attractiveness of that.
Lack thereof.
Right?
Right now, we need to get rid of those ugly blinds and just put some sort of window covering in there. That makes it look a little bit more attractive. There's talk about, the architect's word is fenestration, doing something with the windows and prettying up that side of the building. There was a thought of a mural, which gets kind of some gasps and maybe some, who knows, maybe that's
A little
possible.
modern compared to the look of the church.
Yes.
But I was just, something that makes it look like it's all part of the same place. Because right now it looks like it's not associated with the church.
Well, the
You know
architect
what I
even
mean?
had an idea of putting some vertical lines in it,
Right.
to pick up the board and
The
batten
board,
from the
yeah.
church.
Yeah.
But again, we have an architect to help us do that. Right now, we're concentrating on the other things, but
Right.
that is an item that has been discussed, and the architects like to play with that stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think we would get good service from
Drive up to
AMT
the
on that.
Yeah.
Back here, Joe,
I think Jim had a
Jim.
Yeah, once we get to the fundraising point, and we start raising funds and we come up with, okay, it's gonna be roughly $650,000 for everything. Do we have to wait till we get $650,000 in the bank, or can we get a loan from the bank at some point?
pledges. We need to have
Okay.
pledges. Over probably a 5-year period of time would be what I would imagine. But we need to have the pledges before the diocese will sign off on this. We don't need to have the money in the bank, but we just need to have an assurance that we have. That we will
Have to back it.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
Yes.
would be-
I went through the same thing, Jim, on a church in St. Mary's, and there's ways to do this. And this was 20 years ago, and incidentally, the mortgage was paid off 2 weeks ago. One of the few churches in either diocese to pay off their own mortgage.
Right.
But we had a $600,000 addition to the church and some renovations to our activity center. And that's 20 years ago. So maybe that's our $1.2 million today. Who knows? But we had pledges for half of it, and we borrowed the other half. That was in the days you could borrow it. But in addition to that, you say, well, where are we going to get all the tables from? Where are we going to get the appliances for the kitchen from? Where are we going to get all the little things that we need to do this? We made up a list of these are the appliances we need for the kitchen. These are the pews and furnishings for the church. These are the tables for the activity center. And if you have some loose change, come on out and buy these. And you would be, December was a great month for that. People are looking, so there are ways
Yeah.
to raise
Right.
the small change while we're looking at pledges to do the big stuff. I would tell you that I'm on the other committee also, that my recommendation to John to satisfy the thoughts we have here is if the worship center restroom is a priority, we carve that out and do that as the first project. Les has helped us with a vision that says, maybe we don't need to do this right now. Leave the rector upstairs and don't do anything with that. All right, the old dental office. Maybe the kitchen is something we do separately. Maybe we don't need a final design for the kitchen. Maybe we just bring a contractor in that does kitchens, and we don't spend money with AMT doing it. We have a concept and we get some proposals from a couple of different contractors. There's ways to buy this out, and John's an expert on this. I'm not locally knowledgeable of the contractors, but we have to find the right people to do it, and we can package it. So your answer is, do we need $700,000 or $650 or $600 today? No, but we need to know that it's out there.
It's coming, yeah. We do need to have those pledges. And to your point, and to Les's point about the location of the offices, that we do have ways of getting at some of our largest needs if we are short, if we're not able to raise the funds that we want to raise. This is this is what we'd like to have. We'd like to have all this accessible for folks. If we're still upstairs, that means some folks aren't able to do the stairs very well or at all.
I just raised $300,000 for a management information center in a new building in an engineering college at a university. And 250,000 of that roughly is coming out of RMDs. I think most of us are old enough to know that we're doing RMDs, and if you take your annual distribution and take 10 or 15 grand of that for the next couple of years, you don't see it, you don't miss it, and you get a credit on your taxes because you're not finally paying your taxes on that amount. All right, now that's the other committee, that's just, a random thought. I'll shut up.
No, you're fine.
Joe?
So, can you show us what comes out here, how this looks here, and where?
This whole thing is demolished, right on down to the end of the building. It's a super demolition.
The far end of the.
Everything, this gets stripped out.
Inside.
Ceilings, everything comes out.
Right,
The
yeah.
first floor.
And the whole first floor to the stairway and the kitchen wall. It's a clean demolition.
This bathroom and everything.
So it'd be
Yes.
like
Yeah.
one
These-
big rectangle.
These stairs
Yes.
stay, the stairs going up to, but from that point, from this point over here, from the
Right.
stairs
Yeah.
on over,
That's a clean
Uh,
demolition, and the nice thing about that is if you demolish it all at once, you get the benefits of economies to scale. And then the flooring work and the mechanical electric work. $540,000, half of that is hidden. Half of that is replacement of the 7 electrical panels to 1 master panel, to sub panels, to new circuitry, to replacing, I think it's 5, it may be 3, of the old HVAC systems. We're going to air through the floor, all the plumbing, and mainly structural. All right, so we're going to be putting, we'll probably be tearing floor up to put some joists in and to put some piers below. Okay, so that's a good question, hon. She's been in the business as long as I have.
There was a
There
plan.
was a plant.
Sure.
There was a plant.
Yeah.
Maybe we could with a tunnel, tube you got at the front of the house, and then they slide.
Sliding tube. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah,
And
yes.
they catch them on the down.
Well, the opposite of that's a zip line. So
Right, yeah. We just shoot them back up.
I know.
Yeah, it's like at the bank.
what are you doing? Would you like a committee? Dana?
Could change our
I'm
name.
assuming you're saying, yes, we can do this in stages, and I think, as much as I'd like a lovely new kitchen, we can work with that kitchen, but we can't work with this small area. And to me, that is the biggest, making this bigger, so we can, and it would be nice for you to have new offices, but maybe you'll just have to
Well,
sacrifice.
I don't really, the new office is
Yeah.
part of that. What makes sense to me is if it's possible,
It's
and I
all
really
one
think,
floor.
I think we ought to think about this as the ideal, if we can do that.
This
And
is
then
the vision.
If we're not able to raise the money to do all of that, then we say, okay, well then maybe we're gonna leave the offices here, or we might leave the kitchen for another year or two out, or however we might want to stage that. That becomes another conversation after the fundraising has happened. If you start thinking, thinking small fundraising up front, guess what you're gonna get?
Small.
Right? And so it's important for us, I think, to think and see what that stretch might be.
What would the time period be anticipated for that fundraising, that first, just to see if you can get anywhere close to the 600? Is that several months?
Don't know, that would probably, those are other folks that have that expertise.
I would say it would be no earlier than mid-fall, just as a guess. You don't want to let it go too long because we're starting to get the gestalt from the crowd here. So John's not here, but I definitely need to talk to John and see where we're going.
And don't we also, I think to present to everybody too, the whole idea of doing everything at once with all of the electrical, the structural stuff, it's going to be less expensive than
Right.
doing it in pieces.
You're
And
right.
Including the kitchen. I think we ought to include the kitchen.
I think the kitchen is one separable part. Yeah,
that's
we
better
need to
said.
get the power to
Upstairs
the
up.
kitchen properly, all right,
Have
but
it ready.
fitting out the kitchen could be a separate part.
Okay.
And actually-
The only thing, needs to be considered as a separate part is getting the bathrooms in, So we can, if people want to start a Saturday service down here, it could be, doesn't have anything to do with the rest of it.
Okay, well, yes, it does, because you're gonna do a clear gutting, and you need to do the mechanical, electrical, all, so you can do
He
that.
said
talking
just
about
the
He's about the
bathroom.
bathroom. He's about the
Oh,
bathroom.
yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's,
yeah, I think we all
That's the
agree with you.
priority.
that's phase one we need
Yeah.
to look at right away.
Yeah, we got a smart vestry, that's what they said. Oh, you're on the vestry.
It was smart until last week.
I'm sorry, Bill.
No, we're good. No,
Well,
we're
I
fine.
mean,
Yeah, that's,
I just would like to say that if we did it all and gutted it all and framed it all out and had the kitchen ready, the other parts of the kitchen could come later.
Right.
But the initial parts for getting the electrical and everything upgraded,
That's
we
right.
do it all at once.
Right.
Yes.
But we could then do our own cabinetry and our own appliances if we have to
right.
Yeah,
in
I
another,
agree.
in another
Yeah,
section.
yeah, if
Okay.
that's
right.
necessary. And as you mentioned, there's a subcommittee that's being formed now that's going to look at all this. And you
For the
might get,
kitchen.
you might have someone reach out and ask you, tap you on the shoulder. What do you think about X, Y, or Z for the kitchen? You know, especially
Well-
if it's something that you tend to be involved with quite a bit.
And if we're, not gonna be able to use this space, it's not likely we're gonna be using that kitchen. We could maybe in the meantime, for coffee hour and stuff, use the children's center. It has a kitchen.
Well, that's right. Yes, I mean, if you think about this, and so some of our we're going to have to relocate if in the time that we are having the renovation work.
Right.
That the children's center will become an important staging area for us.
And there are no plans to do anything different with that?
Not right now. It's not part of the scope of this conversation right
Gotcha.
now.
What happens to, I call it the little history nook?
Oh, right. And I think that we can create within that we can find that history nook again, and we can maybe imagine where that might go,
And maybe
somewhere in the
one-
assembly area or
one
somewhere where it's
nicer looking.
available for folks easily to see. There's also we've got this.
Don't let us forget that thought.
We've got this gathering in this little space right here.
That's
When we
right.
first come in this door, we're going to kind of what are you calling that? The huddle area. That might be a spot, Jim,
Yeah.
where that would be available for us also. We want to make sure that it doesn't get hidden or lost.
There's a lot different contracting options in approaching this. Most people hire a general contractor and they hire the subcontractors to end out, you're marking up whatever the subcontractor's number. So if you have a general contractor, he's gonna put 5, 6, 7, 8% on it. The options we've done in the past is we do a design build, HVAC mechanical package. We do a demo package. So they come in and do all the demolition. That's one subcontractor. Then you take the drawings from the engineer and you put out separate design build bids to electricals and mechanicals. They come in and do their work. And then you have what I call standard art, a building contractor who do all the walls.
Build it out.
And build it out. So we've got skill sets in-house that we could contract it that way, and there's savings there. And so to manage that effort's not that big a deal.
And AMT will work with us on an à la carte basis to help us during that time. If we're doing our own design build, if you will, or our own build out, they'll be there available to us, on an hourly basis to consult.
Well, we are at our time, friends. Are there anything else on your heart or mind that you'd like to ask right now? What we're really asking is carry this on into our sabbatical time, really, and this is not the end of presentations. This is not the end of conversations that we're going to have with you, with the parish here. So, yes.
Do I understand correctly that with that ADA bathroom up there, the Saturday service would move from LOLC to here?
I guess that's part of our yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
not the aim?
That is that's one of the goals. Yes, is to have the Saturday service continue, but have the accessibility for it. Yes. All right. Well, what if we were to all stand and say the Lord's Prayer together? Maybe even hold a hand or two.
Get up.
This would be a convoluted little There's a
the
circle
first
making
test.
here. So yeah, we'll have we'll have circles in our circles
There you go.
We'll do that.
You should turn around.
together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.